in Australia, we had this was the model. Now, I'm hoping to write this up, but you've heard of David Syme. He's the head of the editor of The Age, or through the late 19th century, developed this kind of thinking here in this country, wrote a book about it, propagated it through his newspaper, and those ideas carried through to the Federation governments, and was all along the German model. And so that was the economics, about the importance of the ethics and the values and institutionalising that behaviour. We had the values here of new liberalism, Christians, Fabians, sort of making up the vision of the common good. It got the popular name A Fair Go. But this was really serious. When you read the literature, one of the refrains repeating is, we don't want to be like America. We mustn't be like America because of by then, the stark inequality. And so that was their real aim, which they achieved. We're not going to be like America. As the Royal Commission in the Poor Law in Britain in the early 1900s did a survey of all of their empire, and Australia stood out as the country, when they looked at the graphs of poverty and wealth, it had no top and it had no tail. So we were not like America. Okay, so but what were some of the what did they actually do? Well, if they had those values, well, think of the public sector in the economy. It was bigger in Australia than anywhere in the world at that time. And by that we're talking about the infrastructure, the water, the electricity, the railways and the post offices and all of that. We were in the vanguard with the factory legislation and the 8-hour days and the wage boards leading to the Harvester Judgment and all of that. Overseas visitors, we thought we were really advanced in. Two areas were the right to work. We thought full employment came in 1945, but this was what they saw as the biggest thing, noticeable thing about Australian governments. They wanted to get everyone into work. And so they had, like CES, they didn't call it that, but offices to direct newcomers to areas where work could be found. They put groups of people on cooperatives and farms and equipped them and helped them to make a start. So it was the becoming engaged, socialising production, getting people involved, giving them the means to be part of it was the key. And the little man on the land, of course, was the most obvious, the hallmark of that period of economic development was getting the squatters the land back from the sheep squatters and getting the small people onto the farms. Okay, so this was their answer to the social question, the inequality. And I've got to share this with you because it might make us proud of our past rather than ashamed, right? So there's a famous guy, a lot of overseas visitors came to see what was happening in Australia. They thought, this is extraordinary. What did they observe? So this Albert Matin is a French guy, Socialism Without Doctrines is the book, but just listen to what they saw. If the way forward for the working class consists in putting itself on the same level as the bourgeoisie, the Australian worker has advanced as far as possible it is possible to go. He has in fact joined the class of the comfortably off persons, of respectable people, the workers, see, not like the old proles back in the slums and the tenements in Europe. He carries himself with that assurance, so useful everywhere, but more influential in Anglo-Saxon countries and the rest of the universe. So this is it. They'd solved the social question. Alfred Marshall, back in England, wrote a thing about this time about could the workers become gentlemen? Because they were considered second class, they were considered smelly, they worked long hours and they didn't have much of a life. Could they be like gentlemen one day? And he thought maybe down the track they could. In Australia they were. As Matin said, the Anglo-Saxon worker has become a gentleman, a monsieur. He lives in his own house, changes his clothes after work. And he conducts himself like a member of polite society. They thought this is extraordinary. They're working class. If he's a member of parliament, He'll maintain his position during the journey, booking a berth in a sleeping car, staying in a comfortable hotel, and his constituents will approve of all of that because he's their representative. More and more, the exterior differences between worker and bourgeois are disappearing, except during working hours. So, and Australia was leading in this model. It is then English society which exists in the antipodes, but with two very important innovations. Democratic institutions and labour legislation are coming into existence in the mother country, but they have been fully developed only in Australia. The first give rise to independent attitudes and egalitarian feelings. The second ensures to the worker leisure time and resources for his mental and moral development. So it's pretty exciting, isn't it? I mean, that's half a century of the most turbulent period of industrial revolutions, the great transformations. Would it be socialism? Would it be the old free market model? They found a way through to this ideal that that the historical school and the new liberals and all those others were trying to achieve. And Australia was this. Well, that's why they called it the lighthouse to the world, a social laboratory.